Welcome to Redbeard Radio. I'm Brian Keith, and we're going to start off today's podcast in a new way, which is I'm going to read a couple sentences from a new book that's just coming out. Here's the paragraph. I've mentioned that throughout life, we have two choices in each moment. We can move in the direction of fear or in the direction of love. We can also move towards oneness, or we can move away through the process of separation. When we choose togetherness and oneness, then we have the power to heal the collective energy of humanity. That's from page 240 of Sarah Prout's new book, Be the Love. You heard her on episode 70 on Redbeard Radio on using rituals to guide energy and emotions. And you heard Sarah again on episode 82 on how to handle hate, hurt, blame. And now her book, Be the Love, is just hitting stores around the time this podcast goes live. And the subtitle here is 7 Ways to Unlock Your Heart and Manifest Happiness. Now, especially for you people, this is the first episode you've heard. You're wondering, why are we talking about all this stuff on a business podcast? And here's the thing. And I've worked with a lot of companies in my 10 years of business. And half the time, your business problems are business problems. You don't know how to write an email. Your cash flow is screwed up, whatever. But half the time, your business problems, you, the CEO, are your emotional problems. And I've never met someone better at understanding the emotional struggles of people and helping them get more emotionally empowered than Sarah Prout. So Sarah Prout, welcome back on Redbeard Radio for interview number 3.
Thank you so much, Brian. I am just so excited to be here. I always love having conversations with you. So this is an extra treat for me today.
It is so much fun. And there's so many different stories. I finished your book this morning, a couple hours ago, and I was just in this haze of how am I possibly going to choose from all of these different ideas you have in your book. You have chapters on venturing outside your comfort zone, you're not broken, how to let go, how to use your words intentionally. And then I read this story this morning, and that was the paragraph I read there was about after this story you told in your book took place. But I'd love to start off. Could you tell our listeners here the story about this really meaningful walk with your dad?
Mm-hmm. So I love my dad. He's 75 years old. He is the coolest person I know. And since he lives in Australia, I really enjoy bringing him out to America to spend time with him. And we've lost the last couple of years because of the pandemic, although I recently just saw him. And so it reminded me when I was writing the book during this pandemic time of this wonderful time during Christmas, I believe it was, where I said, come on, Dad, let's go for a drive. And we drove out to the Red Rock Mountains, which is near where we were living in Las Vegas at the time. And it was dusk. So it was really beautiful. The clouds were gorgeous, except we had to walk up a hill to see it. And my dad, he wasn't in the best of health back then. And he was really, really cautious. He's like, oh, it's too cold there. I could die. There was a lot of drama around it. But we made the decision to get out of the car one step at a time. We got up the hill and we stood there in a moment of presence. And we were surrounded by the most beautiful landscape. It was almost, he's a watercolorist, and it was almost like being in one of his watercolors. And so part of the book, that specific part, is about creating magical memories with your loved ones, with the people that you love to spend time with your friends, your family, your colleagues, because as human beings, whether you're in business or you're on a personal development path or both, it's so important to remember that we are the sum of our experiences. And so intentionally creating these, making time in your life is so imperative for not only the growth of yourself personally, but to strengthen the connection and bridges of memories that we have with other human beings that we value.
I have met maybe 3 entrepreneurs in my decade of business that I would say this person might be living up to their potential, but I guarantee you if we asked any of those 3, they'd say not even close. They're just getting started. And there's this thing you say here. Let me find it here. You talk about him not being sure about walking up the hill. And then you say about him making the choice. You say that's an act of moving towards oneness rather than staying separate because of being afraid. Mm-hmm. And when you wrote that, I thought, well, how many places in my life and those around me have we not moved towards oneness, moved towards excellence, moved towards service? Mm-hmm. But, it's scary. I don't want it because it's going to hurt. And and it applies everywhere, right? All the way from not grabbing the bag of chips to going for a run when it's cold out, to making the sales call, towards starting the new project, towards reaching out to the friend that you haven't talked to in a while and you think maybe they don't like you anymore. It's everywhere. This idea of moving towards oneness rather than staying separate because of being afraid.
Fear keeps us small. Fear keeps us stuck. And I can guarantee you that any successful person out there has, or perceived successful person out there, has ventured outside of their comfort zone. And we do that as a personal challenge. Brian, I know you've been through the 75 hard challenge as well. I did it
Hilarious.
in June last year.
Inspired by Sarah Prout, folks. In case you ever see the picture of me, my podcast cover picture, and you think he's looking dapper, that's because of Sarah Prout. Because back in June, 3 months before getting married, I had just had a tooth extracted for a failed root canal, and I was on drugs for that, and I was feeling horrible because that's what happens when you're on drugs and you just had a tooth pulled out of your skull. And I wanted to reclaim my power a little bit, and I came across Sarah Prout on Instagram or Twitter or whatever talking about 75 hard. And I think you were at the tail end, or you just finished or something. I was talking to you, Sean, and you're at the tail end of it. And I thought, well, if they can do that, I can do that too. And I, in my still on Vicodin state, decided I should get after it. But I decided at like 3 p.m. one day. And so I had to go do my 2 workouts. And maybe I just got off the Vicodin the day before. I don't know. My 2 workouts, my gallon of water, all this started in the afternoon. And better yet, Sarah, it was the hottest day of my life, literally. 106 degrees, the hottest it has ever been in Olympia, Washington, where I live. This is an hour south of Seattle, folks. 106 degrees. I'm out there walking, baking, just still with this gaping hole in my mouth, still on drugs. And I'm like, I'm going to be cool like Sarah. But that led me to doing 75 days of this uncomfortable thing, which led me to looking fantastic for my wedding. And that photo on my podcast cover with me in that tartan jacket, that's from me at my wedding.
I love that so much, Brian.
I don't know if you told me or saw on Instagram, whatever, but whenever I came across that, Sarah's doing 75 hard and then Sean's doing 75 hard. Well, I'm a monkey. I should do what the monkeys do. There's these direct lines in that when we step over that precipice and we engage in that thing, like, I've never done something for 75 days before. And for me, well, let me ask you first, Sarah, what was your diet thing for the 75 hard challenge?
Oh, I did a totally plant-based diet and then regretted it.
And regretted it?
Halfway through, yeah, because I was just craving protein. I was like, I just need something I've been a vegan for most of my life, but because we were working out twice a day, it was just so intense on my joints and my body. And I just thought, I need fuel. So it was a beautiful experiment. But the whole idea of 75 hard is that it's a mental toughness challenge.
Yeah.
And for me, I just felt so bored in my life that I really wanted to challenge myself to stop being consumed by fear, because at that time, news headlines were getting worse and worse and worse, and social media tended to also echo those sentiments. And I just had to unplug, and I focused on myself. And that was where I was able to rise above that fear, because I'm probably one of the most afraid people of trying new things.
Which sounds impossible. It sounds impossible. You look at your podcast, your books, your business, your social media accounts, your speeches, the tens of millions of people who look to you for guidance, and then you say, oh, I'm the most afraid person. It's really funny because I was thinking about telling my diet story, which, folks, for 75 hard, you got to do one diet strictly for 75 days. And you know what I chose, Sarah? I thought, well, where's my weakest spot? I love sweet things.
Oh, sugar.
So I did no added sugar of any kind, including dextrose. For 75 days, I had only honey and maple syrup for 75 days. That's why I look so good in that tartan suit.
Oh my gosh, everybody's grabbing for the honey and maple syrup now. But I mean, that's beautiful. We should all be giving up sugar. That stuff is not good for you.
I was blessed. I did this in the summer. So we have a lot of berry farms right here. So I ate an enormous amount of blueberries, raspberries, marionberries. It's fantastic. But that was the thing I was afraid of, because I was trying to face my addiction head on, right? And say, okay, I've both never done this level of working out with no rest days. Holy smokes. But I don't want to be, let's say, cocooned by this limiting belief around, well, I'm not enough. I can't get past craving sugar. I'm no more than my cravings. And I wanted to use this tool of 75 hard to go beat that idea in the ground and break it apart into a million pieces, that I am nothing more than my cravings, and I'll never be more than that.
Well, I think that, well, I know that limiting beliefs are invisible addictions. And they show up in the ways in which we hold ourselves back and keep ourselves small. Just like my dad on the side of that hill at Las Vegas, he could have chosen to stay safe and stay in the warm car, but he didn't. He chose to venture outside of his comfort zone, and then that really compounded the effect. I chose to get up off my butt and move it for a change, and guess what happened? My entire mindset changed. My
Really?
vibration changed in a metaphysical way. The way that I perceived the world changed. The strength in which I was able to cope emotionally changed. And I think that that is what any perceived weakness, whether you are a CEO or an entrepreneur or a business owner, it can help you, because Tony Robbins says this, that physiology changes psychology. And that's definitely what happened for me.
Yeah, I'm thinking about a time you're talking about the backing off, and he didn't have to go do it. And I thought, right, I remember, what was this? It's called Lake Serene, maybe in the North Cascades. So when I was living in Seattle, walked up to this lake, and it was one of these snowy lakes. It's a snowy trail up there, so it's wintertime sometime. And I thought, I'm gonna be cool and jump in the water, right? Yeah, be an Iceman, Wim Hof. Woo! Spoiler, didn't do it. I think I stripped down to my shorts and I didn't hop in because I'm a wimp. But I remember that feeling of, oh, and then not going because I was afraid. It's uncomfortable. And while that's an extreme example, that idea of I'm not going to jump because I'm either not sure how it's going to turn out or it's going to be uncomfortable. That's all the way from telling someone I love you for the first time to not sending out that email because it could be better. It's just everywhere in our lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our brains will do anything it can to avoid getting hurt. They're so clever like that. They know it's coming. They can sense it.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not doing that. I feel safe. But then the thrill, there is a thrill that happens after you do something that you don't believe is possible. And I mean, I've had 4 children. There's only a couple of ways out of the body when you're pregnant for the baby. And it's like, it's not a pleasant experience for a lot of people. But you do it because you know that on the other side of that is something unimaginably rewarding, even though it's scary. And a lot of things that are scary, if you do it, you feel proud of yourself. And for a lot of us, we need to learn how to parent ourselves as well, which is probably a conversation for another day.
It's another book right there. My next question, I was going to ask you, how do we get better at confronting fear? Because I can look in my past and I can see times where I've done things that were daunting, and I can look at other people and I can say, oh, Sarah Prout, she's going to publish her second book and all the stuff. You don't say, oh, well, obviously she's a pro at facing her fear and conquering, obviously. Now, you might have a different opinion about your reality, right? But from the outside, and I recognize, and I've had people say this to me too, where I've been talking to colleagues and saying, oh yeah, I didn't do that very well, or I'm not very productive on that. And I was at a convention here a bit ago where one of my colleagues said, man, Brian, you're awesome. And he was talking about some projects that I did, but I felt like I'm not getting anything done. I'm meeting like 10% of my potential on a good day. How pathetic. And then to have a deeply respected peer say, man, you're doing okay. You're doing okay. And that brings us back to what you just said about parenting. That if any of you out there resonate with I'm not even doing 10%, how do you square that with the right level of both ambition, feeling not quite complete, but also feeling at peace? How do you balance that?
I believe it's in how we perceive the situation as well, and how much we can show ourselves compassion. Because here's the thing, I'm a perfectionist. I've been a perfectionist for, I don't know, how old am I? 42 years, how about we say that? And what I realize now is that I've been hard on myself for being aware of being a perfectionist. However, what if I switch that to having this sense of honor because I'm devoted to excellence? I think that could be different as well. So it's about examining these limiting stories that we tell ourselves. I could say, well, I'm not doing enough. I'm never going to do enough. But what's that going to do? That's going to burn me out pretty fast. And I've been burned out before. I know what that feels like. So the key to remember is that you're never going to get it all done. You never will. There's always going to be a different goalpost to reach once you do get to that goal. And then to trust the journey. You have to trust the journey emotionally and all of the ups and the downs that come along with that. So from an emotional perspective, when we really beat ourselves up, it's important to zoom out and to view it like that friend that gave you the praise for saying, hey, you're awesome. You've done a great job here. And that helps because we take everything so deeply personally. And when we realize that it's just an impersonal journey, it is. We're all just playing out our roles on the stage of life. I think Shakespeare put it that way, that it is incredibly powerful for us to remember that we get to guide our energy, our perspective, and our emotions. But from the time we're children, we're trained how to not remember our power, how to not remember our sovereignty. So it's no wonder that fear runs rampant and it stops us from experiencing all the things we want to, because we're afraid. We're afraid of failure. We're afraid of pain. We're afraid of not getting it right or looking stupid or foolish or falling on our butts. But just do it. Give it a try. And also, with that being said, I really want to say here, don't do anything silly or dangerous.
Sounds important.
Don't try this at home, folks. Sean and I watched the Jackass movie on Saturday night, which I deeply regret.
I haven't seen it. I don't think I want to see it. Do I want to see it, Sarah? Okay, thank you.
No, you don't. But it's a deeply symbolic journey into what not to do. And it's not even symbolic. It's also literal.
I used to do more barefoot hiking, where I've done Mount Si and the Cape of Lava Loop barefoot. And I've even been on Mount Rainier hiking around barefoot in the snow. And I have people look at me like I'm crazy. And then I also have people saying, is that a good idea? Should I do that? And my answer is always the same, which is most people get benefit from hiking barefoot rather than wearing shoes. But most people have poorly trained ankles. And so if you switch from your heavy duty, thick lugged hiking boot to going barefoot up this hill, you'll hurt yourself immediately because you're not trained for it. So don't just copy me because I'm doing this thing and it looks cool. You should definitely explore this. It's probably better for you. And the same thing, I was on Mount Rainier in 2019. You'll see me on social media occasionally share a picture of me in the snow shirtless. Yeah, I was doing cold weather training and it was around 30 degrees out and it was really windy and the snow stung my skin and everyone else was wearing parkas because it was freaking freezing out. And people looked at me like I was insane, obviously. And should you do that? No, you should not, unless you train for it. Because to go from parka-clad, really warm person to shirtless, testing your abilities, really training your breath. When I got back to the car, I was out for maybe 2 or 3 hours. My stomach was exhausted because I was breathing so hard continuously for 2 or 3 hours. And if you don't have your breathing technique down, you're going to freeze. You might get frostbite. What I was doing was very dangerous if you were not trained mentally and physically. And so we shouldn't just compare ourselves, which is what we always want to do as humans. Like, oh, that person has that over there. Oh, Sarah Prout, over 800,000 followers on Facebook. Oh my goodness. Wow. Whereas the reality is, okay, well, it's the whole, who came up with this? The whole compare yourself to who you are yesterday, not to, or who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. Who said that? Was that, I don't know, probably a bunch of folks. Maybe it was Jordan Peterson. I don't know. But this idea that we compare ourselves where others are now at our peril. And I do this all the time where I think, because I want to emulate people who are a step ahead, right? So my people I really look up to, my business mentors are mostly a decade older than I am. They're a decade further in their business, decade further in their marriage, decade further in their family, which is great for saying, wow, look at how much I could do. But it's no good at all for actually celebrating the wins. And my friend Greg Jenkins, he does a great job of celebrating wins. He says, you can't just be aggressively, I'm going to go there. You got to go and look at behind you, right? Document that out. Look at behind you. I want to hear, Sarah, how does Sarah Prout, with all your successes, but you also say you're a perfectionist, how does Sarah Prout celebrate her wins and remember where she's been?
That's a great question. I celebrate my wins even when they're tiny, and especially when they're tiny, because it's really that subtle energy of success is built upon tiny step by step. So for instance, I just finished my blog post for today and I've recorded a podcast and all this kind of stuff. I celebrate by just, it's almost like a silent acknowledgement of, okay, every step helps. Every brick is building that house. But for the big ones, for instance, Sean and I just booked a cruise to go to Europe in June. So that's after the book launch is all done. We're going away for 12 days. We've never been alone for 12 days before. And in 12
Wow.
years. So that's going to be an interesting experience because we've always had children to look after and responsibilities. So that is really important as an act of self-care to treat yourself to things once you hit a specific milestone. And I know that there are so many people out there that are like, well, Sarah, how do you do it with success? And it's putting me up on a pedestal. You mentioned the numbers on Facebook, but there's so much room for assumptions, right? We so often project these disowned parts of ourselves onto other people going, oh, well, they must be really good at what they do. But what if to get to those 800,000 fans, I had to spend $1 million on Facebook advertising? Right. And what if I didn't make $1 million back from that? So you'd never truly know what's going on unless you're walking in that person's shoes. So focus on your own journey. Celebrate the hell out of everything that you are experiencing and creating and achieving, and really tune into the power of micro gratitude.
I tell stories about sword fighting, and people go, wow, that's so cool. And it's part of the Redbeard brand, right? Woo. And then I also, much more rarely, tell stories about getting seriously bullied in 6th and 7th grade, and how to some extent, my decade of sword fighting and becoming one really tough guy is an overreaction to getting beat up in 6th and 7th grade. And that deflates the conversation a bit. Now it's no longer quite so, whoa, you build your own armor and you like fight with titanium gauntlets all across the country. Wow. Okay, it's still cool, but if we look at where it came from, maybe you don't want to be me. Maybe you don't want to experience having headbutted somebody into submission while wearing heavy helmets, or sticking your finger into someone's eyeball to make them give up. Maybe you don't want that if you look at where it came from. Maybe you do. I don't know. But it's not simple. It's not nearly as simple as the surface layer of, I'm a sword fighter. I've done this for a decade. Look at this cool picture of me in armor. Aren't I cool? Goes deeper.
It really does. One of the best pieces of business advice that I was ever given is be willing to fail fast, because the people that you perceive as successful out there have been willing to be knocked down time and time again. And then the key difference is getting back up. You get back up on your feet, you try again, you reinvent, you try it from a different angle. And Lord knows I've tried it from so many different perspectives, different projects and offerings. And it's a journey. And we just need to honor the journey and the unfolding of whatever entrepreneurial adventure you're on right now.
It's incredible. Well, Sarah, your book, it comes out May 10th, which is only a couple weeks away as we're recording this. But we're going to have this episode drop May 10th. So, folks, if you're hearing this episode, you're going to go to sarahprout.com/be-the-love. That's sarahprout.com/be-the-love to go ahead and get this book. Sarah, did you know that you are only the second book where I have bought enough of your books to give to everyone in my business mastermind?
Oh, thank you. That's lovely.
When they get this, well, they're going to wonder, why are we being sent this emotional empowerment book about unlocking your heart and manifesting happiness? And it's just what I said at the start of the episode. Yes, we need to make your landing pages better and up your Twitter game. But also, it's that self-knowledge. That's what's holding us back, is that communication, that relationship with ourselves. And I'm excited for members of the Accelerator. They're going to get this book. They're going to get a tool that's going to help them build that relationship with themselves. And I expect the landing pages and the Twitter will take better care of itself once they read Be the Love. So, Sarah, thank you for being on Redbeard Radio, and we will see you again soon.
Thank you so much for having me, Brian.